Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to those of you online as well. My name is Ashley Farinacci, Public Information Officer for California Incident Management Team 10. Tonight, you will receive a situational update from the Pack Trail Fire to include an update from your agency representatives, an operational update, current and expected weather, current and expected fire behavior, air quality and DIY filters, and closings from the California Incident Management Team 10 Incident Commander. In order to keep this meeting to about an hour long, please use the note cards that are provided in the back. And if you have any questions, raise your hand and we could provide another note card. Write your questions on the note card and then hold them up, and any of our friendly PIOs around the back will come and get the note card from you, and we will give it to our speakers who are able to answer your questions. In addition to our speakers that are speaking today, we also have representatives from the Fremont County Emergency Management Department, the Fire Warden of Fremont County, the Dubois Fire Chief, the Pinedale District Ranger, the Black Rock District Ranger, and the BLM Acting Field Manager. If you have any questions or your questions weren't answered to your satisfaction, we're also going to hang around in the back after the meeting's over. Online viewers, please comment into the questions box and we'll answer your questions during the meeting as well. If you have any additional questions, you could also contact the Fire Information phone line between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. that's listed on the daily update, and one of our public information officers will talk to you on the phone. To start this briefing, let's have our agency administrator, Todd Stiles, come up.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Todd Stiles, Jackson District Ranger with the Bridger-Teton National Forest. So thanks so much for coming out tonight. And one thing I just wanted to say was, I know the duration of this incident's been a long time, right? It was around August 16th when the fish creek started. And every team that's been here, I think this is the 6th incident management team we've had between the two fires, has really just spoke to the hospitality of the community at Dubois, so that to a person on the teams, they've really mentioned how much they've appreciated being here. So thanks for your hospitality and the level of patience you've displayed dealing with all the smoke and just all the extra people in your community. So I just want to thank you for that. So what I wanted to kind of speak to real quick here, if you look up on the screen here, so what this is a progression map here that kind of shows the incident as it evolved. And initially this was Fish Creek right up on Togety Pass area. And you're going to kind of see, I'll just let you look here. And you see as those different colors come in, that was the progression of the fire on different days and what it did and kind of how it grew. And like we kind of said last Friday when we had the meeting, this fire has done some things that aren't really all that common. The southwest and northeast progression in this country is typically what happens with the prevailing winds, but it's kind of done southern and western growth a couple times. And so that kind of darker green that you see corresponding to the fires that's surrounding it has been the forest closures that we've had to do. And we've modified those like 6 times, if my memory's serving me, since August 16th when the fire started. And as you can imagine, that dark green around the fires was much smaller because we were trying to only close the portions of the forest that was absolutely necessary for public safety, realizing the impact to the community, right? Whether it's just people wanting to get out for a hike, it's people that were scouting for elk season, it's people trying to get firewood. So the reason we kind of wanted to show this was to provide a little bit of the kind of background and rationale as to why the closures are what they are. Obviously, it's hunting season here. It's a big deal. I don't need to tell you that. So we definitely haven't taken that lightly when we're closing portions of the forest, but we've definitely felt like it's been compelling for public safety. And if you guys are seeing particularly some of the red and pink, right, that was associated with the Pack Trail, we've had some large days. You remember the one Sunday where we had a huge southwest and northeast growth and it came right in on the Wind River corridor. We've had, days of 6 to 7 miles, other days of 3 miles plus. and that's why this closure's been changed as many times as it has. One thing I want to say on that, and definitely we're not going to make any promises tonight, but we are daily meeting with with our incident commanders and the operations folks on the team to validate how big the closure is and how big it needs to be. And are there portions of the fire area that are less active that we can shrink the closure and let people back in? That doesn't put too much of an operational issue on us to keep people safe. So don't want to promise anything, but definitely if we can get through a little bit of weather here, which you're going to hear more about, just know that we'll absolutely be doing everything we can to look at that so we can get folks back in for elk season, firewood gathering, whatever it is you want to be doing back out there.
Continuing with the Shoshone Agency Administrator, Jeff Von Kienist.
Yeah, hi, Jeff Von Kienist, Wind River District Ranger. I also wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about creating defensible spaces around your homes. If you live in a forested environment, this is like, we've seen, I think, 4 pretty large fires in the last 2 decades here around Dubois. One of the things you can do is to reduce fuels around your homes, to give firefighters a fighting chance and try to keep fire on the ground, keep the intensity low so that they have an opportunity to protect your homes. There's a number of resources around that can help you understand how to do that. Ron Wimpin is one of them. He's our Deputy County Fire Warden. Mike Franchini is our Fire Chief here in Dubois. Both of those people are really familiar with, helping you understanding what you could do to reduce fuels around your homes. Just as a personal note, I had a fire go through my own place in Oregon about 20 years ago. I did not reduce the fuels like I should have. It was a learning lesson for me. I lost my barn. I lost my outbuildings, all my outbuildings. I lost fences. I lost a bunch of my trees. If I had done a little bit of work around there, I probably could have saved some of those buildings, because when the structure guys came around, they did come around, they saved my house, but they were just kind of pointing out, hey, if you hadn't had 4 cords of wood in your barn, we might have been able to do something. There were helicopters coming and dropping bucket loads of water on my barn, and then the minute they went away, it was right back to burning. So it was a hard lesson for me to learn. And it doesn't take that much for you to do a little bit of work around your house as far as reducing the fuels, mowing, pruning, and reducing the numbers of trees that are right around your structure. But anyway, there's opportunity to talk with some of the folks that have that experience, and they're available to you, and I would highly recommend you use that.
Next, we will have an operational update from our Operations Section Chief, Dave Soldavini.
Good evening, everybody. As far as the operational update goes, I'd like to start up on the north end of the map where the Fish Creek fire was before they grew together. Up on that north side where it's along 26 up near the pass, it's been really quiet. Hasn't been much heat next to the road. Every now and then a little bit of smoke, but nothing that's been a threat. Just off the highway to the south, there's been some spot fires in this area, to the there to the west. And so we've been working those with aircraft. It's not a spot we want to be putting firefighters, and that's been really successful. There have been less and less problems with those, and over the last few days we haven't had to do anything with them. Coming down the Highway 26 is where we get into a lot of the work we've been doing. They're kind of a dual-pronged effort. One of them is on the 540 road going up parallel to the Wind River. We've been putting in a shedded fuel break there where the fire came down last week. We've been able to get in there and go direct and kind of tighten some of that stuff up and just stop progression right there. And then all the spur roads off of it, we've been working those just to kind of keep boxing that fire in right there and keep it up out of the Wind River Valley. And that's been a really successful operation. And here's just some pictures of this. It's called Division D. That's what Div D on the photograph up there is about. And you can see we're along the road off on the left, going through, reducing the fuels along there, and then in this case, putting them on a forwarder and then taking them out to a landing, and so they're piled so that they can be burned later. Next picture. There's a few more pictures of this kind of work. So in this case, you can see where all the equipment's been tracking on the road on the left, and how it's reduced all of not all of the fuels, but all the ladder fuels, all the stuff that's going to get up and make dramatic fire behavior. These kinds of fuels that are left behind are they're going to burn down on the ground, but they're not going to create a threat to getting across that road and not create an unsafe situation for firefighters to be in there doing work when it's on fire. Okay, next. Another picture, just more equipment in there doing it. And this has been one of the nice things we've gotten a lot better at in the last 10 years, is using that equipment to get in there and get a large amount of work done. And then we can get our crews into areas where the heavy equipment isn't effective or won't be able to work at all. And it does a combined effort. It works really good. So yeah, one more picture here. And then the other half is point protection. We have along with these folks in there in the woods trying to keep the fire away from the river, down along the river corridor and along the highway, we have a structure protection group. And so they're doing what's called point protection. And this picture just shows some work going on. If we go to the next picture, so we have folks looking across the valley, keeping an eye on what the fire's doing, what potential it has, relaying information to those folks over on the other side who are in the woods and can't see it, and then working with helicopters to really put that fire out. In the next picture, going into the different houses, looking at what's going on with the fuels, what kind of defensible space they've done, what kind of work we can do to support them with the resources we got, and what we can leave in place that's going to help firefighters should that fire come down off of the rim there and out of the forest and into the communities right there. So here's another picture with some sprinklers in somebody's yard going to work, and then let's see if we got any more. Okay, so that's kind of what the East Structure Group is doing. Once we get out of that and we start getting back up into the woods a bit more, the 532 road, we've been going out doing the same kind of shaded fuel break work along there with heavy equipment and some of the areas with crews, working along the 532 out to, and this is where my numbers start getting a little confused. I believe it's the 544 that heads out to Fish Lake, and so we've gotten some good work in there. And right now we're working on a stringer of timber that comes up in that Fish Lake area up over onto that broad ridge where it starts running south down towards Union Pass. And so that's what we call Division India. And then when you get down there, could you go back to that? And then we get down into an area that we call Division Juliet. We break the fire up geographically, and then we give a manager the responsibility for this geographical area, and they're responsible for all the resources in there, and then we all work together. And then down in Juliet is where a lot of the action has been for us, because we have the guard station down there. We have cowboy camp. There was a Roz, and then there are a bunch of other structures down there. The warming hut and was strawberry warming hut. And so the fire's been getting closer to that and encroaching on. In some areas, it's actually impacted it. So we've put a lot of effort into that. And so what does that look like? Let's go to this picture. So this is cowboy camp, and this was yesterday. We had some seats, single engine air tankers in there, putting a retardant box around that. Fire's already been in there, but there's some fuels left that could burn. So this just reinforcing the work that's been done around there. And the next picture. Oh, this is a video. So here comes the aircraft. And it's just flying by there. Up. And then this is a fire boss, and it scoops water out of a lake and drops it. There's no retardant or chemical component, but you can see how by putting the water on the fire goes out. You guys are probably familiar with this concept, I'm imagining. So yeah, there we go again. And at the beginning of that, if we could just loop that one more time. You can see the cowboy camp is right down in here. You can see the retardant line and how the fire encroached on it right there. And there goes that tanker. But we were able to, while this was going on and that fire was there, we were able to have folks in there because we had defensible space. We had helicopters in the air, and they were able to knock the fire down, and then the firefighters put it out as it got anywhere near that cowboy camp. So real successful operation out there. If we can go to the next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. And then we got crews working around the guard station out there at Fish Creek to reduce the fuels, like Jeff was talking about. And then we also put retardant around that. And the fire hasn't gotten there yet. We're doing everything we can to keep the fire away from there, but we want to be ahead of the game and not behind the curve if something happens there. Next picture. Okay, so going back around there, once you turn the corner and you start coming up the west side of the fire, we've been patrolling this area. The fire spread out there has been really minimal. The country is incredibly difficult and dangerous, borderline impossible to effectively fight fire in. So we're keeping an eye on it. We're patrolling that and then making sure that we have good backup for that. And so what the backup looks like is I have a group that's operating out of Jackson, and they come into the Grovant every day, and they're going through all those structures, doing that same thing we saw the pictures of with the East Structure Group in there, making sure that should the fire come down, everything here is in good shape. And then as we patrol that fire and we monitor it, if it gets into an area where we can effectively fight fire and safely fight fire, we're going to be in a position to do so. And right now, that's just not effective or efficient firefighting, so we're going with the patrol there. And I think we got a picture of them at work out there. Yep. This is at the Halpin Ranch out in West Structure. Next picture. And then this is at Goosewing Ranch. Next picture. Oh, that one's artsy. That one's from Goosewing Ranch as well. And then I'm not sure what structure this is, but you can see where the fire on the right-hand side of the photo right here is. That's down around that Fish Creek cowboy camp area, just north of it in an area where we just can't get in there and do anything. And so that's where that smoke's been coming up from. Next picture. Okay, so that brings us kind of a picture of what goes on during the day. We don't walk away from this thing just because it's nighttime. We have an additional group that goes out at night. They're focused on wherever the concerns are. So right now we've been splitting them up between the southern end of the fire and Highway 26. Because if something unexpected happens, we want to know right away. And it also helps when we get up in the morning, especially where the fire's doing some more stuff down here, to have really good firsthand intelligence from them. So as we're planning and engaging our resources at 6 or 7 in the morning, we know where to send them so we can get the job done well. So I think we got a couple pictures there. Yep, so that's them all lined up doing patrol. And then it's been the Aurora Borealis the last couple nights. And so here's a picture of the fire at night. And then the next picture is, oh, I thought it was the Northern Lights. I guess it's another artsy fire picture. I stand corrected. I thought it was an Aurora Borealis one. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. Is there any more slides here? Yeah, and so the idea behind this is what are the real values at risk here? It's people's homes. Well, it's people. I feel pretty good about you all right now and your safety. And then the firefighters' safety. Those are our biggest priorities. And then it becomes the structures out there, those values that we have and what we can do to save them. And there's a professional term, it's called point protection. It's like, here's a point of value. We got to put extra effort. We got to make sure that this is something that's still standing when we're done. And do as much effort as we can right there, but still worried about the firefighters. We have to get them home. That's job one. And yeah, I see some heads nodding. I think you can understand that. And we're also, that doesn't mean that's all we focus on. We're doing what we can to corral this fire. This fire does not want to be corralled. This fire wants to do whatever it wants to. And so we're trying to find those situations and times where we can kind of check it up and we can keep that fire spread from happening, or when it does, reduce the impacts of it so that there's not as much harm to the forest and to the animals and the ecosystem out there. So it's a really complex operation, but it's done with a lot of good support from your local folks. And I think it was Todd or Jeff who was saying how appreciative we are of how kind you are. We go to a lot of places. We deal with a lot of communities. And I have to say, this has been one of the more enjoyable and nicer communities to work in. So thank you very much.
Next, we will hear current and expected weather from incident meteorologist Mark Luffelbein.
Well, good evening. When I was here last week, we were talking about a cold front that was coming through, and we saw wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. Fortunately, that's not the case this time. We have a little cold front going right along the Wyoming-Montana border to our north, but we're actually not going to get such strong winds, so we are going to get some gusts. Today, we did see wind gusts 30 to 40 miles per hour on the fire. However, we had a cloud cover. That certainly helps out fire behavior. Without that sunshine out there, that makes a difference. The other thing we saw was relative humidity didn't get below 20%. As a meteorologist on a fire, I'm often forecasting variables that we don't think about in our daily lives, and relative humidity is one of them. So a relative humidity of 100% gives us fog. So that's usually the only time I'm really worried about it in my daily life. But on a fire, when relative humidity gets below 20%, it starts taking moisture out of the fuels and makes them more receptible to burning. So that's what I'm looking for as a meteorologist. And tomorrow we're going to have those conditions. We're going to get our clouds out of here. We're going to have mostly sunny skies for a while in the morning there. We're also going to have RHs, or relative humidity, dropping below 20%. And we're also going to have winds gusting up to 30 miles per hour in some locations. So those are going to be some key combinations there that are going to be conducive to some pretty erratic fire behavior at time, that at least the potential for that. Fire behavior analyst here today will get into more of that. Also, we'll have a lot of instability. You think about instability being able to build a thunderstorm. Well, you need moisture. If you don't have the moisture, you might still have the instability. And in this case, the fire is going to be not really hot. It makes it very easy for that airflow to go up, and when it does that, it can suck in more air at the base, and it makes it a nice big column, and you'll start to see those columns of smoke. So we're looking for a big day tomorrow as far as weather goes, with the hot, dry, unstable conditions for us, but things are going to change. We got one more day to get through, and then we're going to start to see some differences. As a matter of fact, on Sunday there, I was talking earlier about a wind gust of 13 miles per hour. I didn't even know what direction to put the winds from. They're going to be so light, I didn't think we were going to see much of a direction flow. And after that, we do see some yellow showing up. These colors here are related to how strong those winds are, how dry those relative humidities are, and you don't see a lot of that after we get past Sunday there, as there are going to be some wind gusts, but for the most part, lots of green showing up, which is good for us. And going in all the way to next Thursday, that's a week out. That's a long way to forecast the weather, but we are starting to see some potential for maybe some rain as we head into later next week, possibly even some snow, with the snow levels getting down to around 8,000 feet if that shapes up the way it currently is forecasted to shape up. So tomorrow, not great news. After that, things start to really improve for us. Thank you. I'll stick around after, and if you have any questions for me, come and find me.
Next, we will have current and expected fire behavior by our fire behavior analyst, Renee Hinault.
Good evening. So this first picture, I just wanted to show everybody, one of the things that's driving this fire and limiting the access for the firefighters is there is just a massive amount of dead fuel, standing dead fuel and dead fuel on the ground from previous burn scars or from beetle kill in the spruce models. So you can just see just the sheer amount of dead standing trees that are there, and we just really can't put firefighters in harm's way to work underneath those. Those not only can fall and kill somebody, but they also provide to a lot of ignition sources with spotting potential. So that's one of the things I saw out there today, and I wanted to show to you all. That's one of the things that's driving this fire. So when I look at fire behavior, I take a look at what is the main driver of the fire, what's carrying it, and then what's the change maker going to be for the day, and then how does that affect to the personnel on the ground and their firefighting efforts. So the fuels have really been a big driver of this fire, and you watch that progression map as it went kind of slowly. The fire moved very slowly, and then all of a sudden there was a day that the fire started making bigger growth, and that was a big turning point in the curing of the fuels that were carrying the fires. Some of the fuels that were out there, like the meadows and the old burn scars, really weren't carrying the fire, and they're checking it up. Once we kind of transitioned that point and those fuels cured so that they would carry fire well, we started seeing bigger fire growth days. The second thing that makes this fire really move is winds, and winds in excess of about 35 or 40 miles an hour. We had a few days where the wind blew up to 35 miles an hour when we didn't see much fire spread at all. Once it exceeded that threshold, the day that maybe we can go to the map. Up in here, this really long run, like the IMET said, we had a 60 mile an hour gust there, 49 mile an hour winds, and that's just something that nobody can keep up with. Our aircraft are ineffective, and it's going to be conducive to large fire growth days. Okay, we can go back to where I was at in that. So cold front passages are usually, you guys live around here, you know what they're all about, right? They bring really high winds, and especially with no moisture, they really tend to spread the fire. Maybe my next picture. So this is just a little time-lapse video I took today out on the fire, and you can see there are the cumulus clouds. The cloud layer above is really helping moderate fire behavior. The smoke column would just go up to the cloud layer where the cumulus clouds were and sort of stop and not build really high. Tomorrow we're not going to have that cloud cover, so there isn't going to be anything to kind of moderate that vertical movement of the smoke. And when that smoke moves vertically, like the IMET was talking about, it helps inflow winds fan the fire and burn a little bit better and hotter. So clear skies, instability, low humidity, low fuel moistures are all the ingredients for a large fire growth day. I don't anticipate it being anything near what we saw with those cold frontal passages. In the absence of a wind greater than 35 miles an hour, this fire's only been moving about 1 to 3 miles per day. Tomorrow we could see a little bit more movement, but the wind being out of the southwest, most of the movements should be up to the northeast. I don't anticipate it moving all the way out into the highway or the structures or anything like that. We have implemented, since like what Dave talked about, we've implemented several mitigation measures since the time the team has got here that's helped check the fire. So utilizing some natural brakes and doing some mechanical thinning and things that are going to check or slow that fire or even prevent the fire growth. This afternoon they were working on tying into a fire that we had previously burned this summer in the Leeds Creek area. And if it's already burned, it can't burn again. So they're utilizing that feature as something to anchor off of and bring some lines to help secure that and keep that fire from progressing out to the east anymore. Looking at better conditions Sunday. So tomorrow's like our big fire day, and that's going to wind test things and give firefighters a challenge. But after tomorrow into Sunday and later in the week, these conditions seem to really improve, and firefighters should have a little bit of time to get the rest of those mitigation measures constructed. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Again, my name is Ashley Farinacci, Public Information Officer. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about air quality. We have an air quality advisor who just arrived to the fire today. His name is Tom Pierce. So in the future, in the next coming days to weeks, make sure that you're checking out our air quality forecast. It's a nicely written forecast that talks about the long-term effects of the air quality. Next slide. But as you're on your computer, you're going to see different numbers associated with air quality. You could see here on the graph that green is good, 0 to 50, and then down in the maroon colors, 301 or higher. Currently today, you can go to the next slide. Okay, go back actually. Currently today, we were in between the orange area and the red area, which is in the unhealthy groups, but over in the Jackson area and in Teton, they were in the 700s. So they're getting most of our smoke pushing over into that area. Next slide. So there's a couple different ways that you could watch out for yourselves regarding air quality. First check your air quality forecast. That's what I just showed you earlier, which is the long-term speaking effects of the air quality. But then we also have our current air quality, which is on a website called fire.airnow.gov, which I'm going to explain on the next few slides. But also use your common sense. So you know your body, you know your health, you know whatever problems you have, so make the best decisions for yourself. If it's super smoky outside, don't go out for a run or cut the grass. And then also filter the air. You could use an N95 mask, or you could build a really great DIY air quality filter at your own home. Next slide. This is the fire.airnow.gov website. When you go to it, there's many different dots on the screen. The larger dots are the permanent ones that are here all the time, and the smaller ones might have been ones that we put up just for this incident, or they might be little ones that people put in their homes. And there's lots of different air quality sensors all around this area, and more are going to be going up soon. Next slide. So when you go on fire.airnow.gov, you could click on your town here of Dubois, where we have an air quality sensor, or whenever you travel around, you could see some that there's also some in Kelly, Moose, Antelope Flats, Jenny Lake, etc. Next slide. Today around 1 o'clock I pulled this data and the air quality was 136 here in Dubois. Then you can click on the expand and it'll come to here and it shows you some of the trends and how it's been trending over the last few days. So today it's trending downward. Next slide. And then you could click one more, go back, sorry. Here you can click on more charts in the history section, and then it brings you to a better graph where it talks about the air quality over the whole week. So you can see on October 5th, we had very good air quality here, but on October 6th, it went up very rapidly. So you can make the good decisions for yourself. Next slide. You could create a basic box fan using MERV 13 filters. It's very important that you use 13 because that's what filters out the air. That filters out the smoke. We have directions in the back if you would like to do this at home, and you could follow these directions. They work really well. I live in a wildland urban interface, and I have one in my home, and I keep extra 13 filters in my closet. We do prescribed burns, and we have a lot of wildfires where I live, and you have to be ready. If you don't want to use one now, buy it and put it in your closet for the next fire prescribed burn in your area. It'll definitely come in handy. Thank you. And next, we'll have closing comments from our incident commander, Joe Sean Kennedy.
Thanks, Ashley. Do you have the IR map up? Hannah? Maybe, maybe not. It's okay. Good evening, folks. Joe Sean Kennedy with California Incident Management Team 10. First, I wanted to say thank you all both for your time for being here tonight as well as last Friday night, and all the hospitality you guys have shown us for the past, I believe today is day 9, so we've been here about 10 days, and nothing but thank you, appreciation. Was it Saturday morning I was out, there were several people that stopped and said thank you for the information, so that is very much appreciated. Trust me, it is not like that everywhere we go. It really isn't. The common phrase, I believe one of our former presidents said, we're with the government, we're here to help. But in all honesty, we're here to serve you. We're here to serve the agency, the Forest Service. We're also helping out the BLM, the local government. We are here to help the town get through this. We're here to point protect around the structures. We're here to help confine this fire, and we're here to meet your needs. Hopefully we have started to do that. One thing that we heard pretty loud and clear was you all wanted the daily updates. Our folks have been doing that. Hopefully that works. I see a couple. That's all her. What's that? It's not as great as I wanted to be, but I wanted to show you this. This is one of our tools that we use. So every night throughout the United States, we have a Learjet that crosses the United States, and it will do infrared scanning on all of our fires. So this was last night's, and the different areas show the scattered heat, the isolated heat over in Fish Creek, and then the intense heat over here in the Purdy burn scar and down here where it's been most recently burning. Those are just tools that we use, so every morning we could say, Dave, this is where you need to put your folks, this is where it's burning, this is where it's headed to. So just one of the tools where it's going and where it's been, and if you look at that Fish Creek fire, looking pretty good. But this is also what we use with the local, I went past my mark, didn't I? Sorry about that. I got a demarcation line. What does the closure need to be? What are the evacuations? What is the threat to the community? This is one of the tools that we use to make those recommendations and make those very tough decisions, because I know it does affect folks. The last thing that we want to do is put anybody in a bad situation, make the wrong decision, or what's even worse is saying, you know what, you can go back into your house. 2 days later, you leave, because that definitely does not work. But that's just is a good video. The other thing that I wanted to mention, last Friday when we were here, the real potential was on the west side, over by the highway corridor. It went for 7.5 miles this way on the backside. So this fire is going to do what it wants to do. And we had lots of firefighters prepared to protect the homes 24 hours on that Highway 24 corridor. So now what we're doing is we're kind of having to split our forces in between the two different areas to make sure that we are still good along the Highway 24 corridor, 26 corridor? 26, thank you. And as well as on the south side by Union Pass. So we are working different areas. If you guys are familiar with the area, probably 100 times better than I am, it takes about a good 4 to 5 hours to get around because you can't get around down this back end. So lots of geographic, lots of different areas that are affected. And I would want to say this is probably one of the most gorgeous places at 6 o'clock in the morning to see sunrise at our briefing. Absolutely gorgeous. So we are humbled to be here and to serve you. And we will stay here this evening to make sure most of your questions are answered. There's got to be some kind of cutoff eventually, but we will work our best to answer any of your questions. And I got a couple that were handed to me. So is it okay if I start answering a couple questions, boss?
If you have any additional questions that you haven't given to our PIOs, please raise them into the air now, and we'll come around and pick them up. And if you have any additional questions off the top of your head, grab a note card from one of them and write them down. Thank you.
Can we explain management action point? Yes. So on our maps, and these are normally internal maps that we have, we put what are called management action points, or if it hits a geographic area, if the incident or whatever hits a geographic area on the map, we would do this. It's not always if this, then that. A lot of times it is consider this. And for example, if it went past here, we might evacuate somebody where. So that's our management action point so that we try to are thinking ahead. We're always trying to think 3, 4, 5, 6 days ahead. That answer that question, whoever asked it? Yes, no, maybe so. Why are we not using VLATs and other large air tankers on this fire? Excellent question. So air tankers are one tool that we have. However, air tankers alone do not put fires out. We always have to follow it up with boots on the ground, with firefighters on the ground. So in this fuel type, with 60 to 70% mortality, we can't put firefighters on the ground in a lot of places. So those VLATs are called very large air tankers. They can go a very long distance and put a large line of retardant down. We can't follow that up with firefighters. And we're not trying to fully suppress the fire. We are containing it through natural barriers as well as man-made barriers. So that's one of the reasons. We are using seats, the smaller ones, tactically. If you notice yesterday, we did it behind the cowboy camp and over by the guard station. So we can do it strategically where we need to protect those values, those homes that are immediately threatened, instead of putting excuse me, retardant just out in the middle of nowhere that's not going to be followed up by our firefighters. The other piece that I would like to add out there is this is a very sensitive watershed, and we just don't want to add other issues to the watershed, so we try to make sure we're going to do it where we can. I've been talking too much today. So those are the two questions I had. Ashley, we'll turn it back to you.
Next, Todd Stiles will take answers or questions.
Yeah, so the question here, in the Lava Mountain subdivision, we appreciate everything you're doing. The trim and cutting that's being done, the piles that are resulting from that work, what are the plans for that cleanup? So real good question. And across the whole scope and scale of this fire, we've done an awful lot of that work to get rid of a lot of the ladder fuels and just make it so that if we do get fire in the area, the fire behavior is going to be real minimal on the ground, and we're not going to get a crown fire or anything from the smaller trees up into the bigger canopy. And it can make a lot of stuff. So we have folks on the fire called resource advisors, and they're out every single day, and they're embedded in the divisions, and they're looking at the activities of the suppression and how those activities might leave some sort of resource impact, whether it's impact to water quality, it's impact to trees and vegetation, or in the case of like a private property, if we're leaving a bunch of fuels behind, then yeah, you guys don't really want to have to deal with that and have a big mess. So what we can do is work with those division supervisors and the resource advisors to specifically take a look at not only Lava Mountain subdivision, but the other areas that we're going to be working in, and come up with the best solutions. Sometimes what that looks like, earlier in the fire when we were doing a bunch of vegetation removal at Brooks Lake Lodge with the finer fuels, we got chippers in and we chipped a lot of that. That tends to work pretty good because then that stuff's going to biodegrade quicker. You guys aren't going to have these ginormous piles that have to come back and be burned and everything. So it's not having been in here, I don't want to tell you exactly what we'll do, but we will look at that. And that's a lot of times what we call repair work, because right now, obviously, right, the emphasis is on doing these confine and point protection actions so that the focus is protecting the values at risk. And this kind of stuff that, yes, we need to do it, but it's not the focus right on the front end, but it will be. And so those resource advisors stay in whatever resources we have as we transition to a new team after our California Team 10. If we luck out and we actually can get some weather, then so on the Fish Creek fire, that fire footprint, and I realize it's combined with Pack Trail, but most everything off the Flagstaff Road, that country closer to Togety Pass, we did actually accomplish the repair work on most of that, all the way down to like grading the roads that we had made a mess of with all the traffic on them. So in general on this fire, I mean, we're going to see what happens, right? Because it could be, as it happens here a lot, where all of a sudden we're in this frustrating pattern of all this warm, ridiculous, hot, dry weather is causing this fire behavior. But if the IMET is right and we're rooting for him for next Wednesday or Thursday, if we truly get some moisture, who knows? I mean, it could be multiple inches of snow, and that could prevent us getting to some of the repair this fall. Some of that might have to be done next year when things melt back out. But what I can tell you is the priorities would be in the lower country around the, kind of the private property first. So.
Next, our Shoshone Agency Administrator, Jeff von Kneist, will answer some questions.
Yeah, so we had a question, why are we not in a fire ban? So about weekly, our leadership teams from probably the Bridger Teton, but for sure the Shoshone, but we meet and we talk about, there's a number of criteria we look at to decide whether we're going to go into level 1 to whatever fire restrictions. And there are a lot of them are like planning levels. What kind of resources do we have nationally? What kind of fire weather are we looking at ahead of the game, like just ahead of us? And so we're really close to that. We're right on the cusp of the number of different criteria that we would go to a fire ban. But usually the tiebreaker is, are we getting new starts? And generally, are we getting new starts from man-made fires? And the answer is basically people have been behaving themselves very well. They've been putting their fires out. Our hunters have been putting their fires out, and we don't want to, as much as we can, we don't want to impact the public and their experience in the woods. As long as they're doing a good job and paying attention to and putting their fires out, then we don't really want to impact them if that's kind of the tiebreaker, right? That's what so both forests have been looking at that, and essentially the public has been very well behaved as far as leaving us campfires burning. And so for now, we're not going into fire ban. We're hoping that this weather comes in a week or so, And if it does, we probably won't go into a fire ban, and we're hoping we don't have to.
Next, our Operations Section Chief, Dave Soldavini, will answer some questions.
Actually, it's 2 questions over 4 different cards. 3 of them are the same. And this isn't a fun one to answer. It has to do with those folks that have been watching our updates about Union Pass in that area. It's been said that we were up there putting in sprinklers and hoses, and that's not the case. I don't know why that particular bit of information got out that way. The only way I can explain it is that is a lot of ground. That takes me an hour in a helicopter going about 100 miles an hour to fly around it and take a look at it. I got 500 people on this incident, 350, 400 of them probably work for me. And knowing what each and every single person is doing is a difficult job, and we try to do better so that when we are giving you information, it's as accurate as possible. And in this case, we let you down, and I apologize for that. And that's all I can do and all I can say. That does feed into the next question, which was somebody saw 20 to 24 firefighters staged at Union Pass and Porcupine right there on the hairpin. And if they'd come by a little bit later, they would have seen 40. We are doing work in that area. And the work that we're doing right now is with crews and engines to get up there and do fuels reductions and management. And it's a good tactic to be using. When you look at this fire and you look up where it says Div D, well, here, I'll go to this one. You know, the fire is close in here, so having a lot of people with an immediate response capability is the right place to be operationally. This fire's way over here, and then, you know, Union Pass communities, Warm Springs subdivision, the Porcupine subdivision are quite a ways away. And so I have some extra workforce in here that's sitting around in case the fire moves. And so I'm able to repurpose it to get some work over in Union Pass ahead of any real threat. I don't see a real threat to Union Pass right now with what we've got going on. And that's right now. That could change tomorrow, and so I'm not making any promises there. I'm just trying to explain to you honestly what we've got going on and how we're engaging in there. We've got the extra workforce. I'm going to put them to work, and they're going to get in there and do some of that work in your community. Now, if it did get to the point where things evolved and it was more of a threat to those of you who live up in that area, we're going to be ramping up, and that plays to the management action points that Joshawn was talking about. And we've got those in place for where we're going to be looking at more of a presence or keeping the operation where it's at. And I hope that answers a very difficult question, honestly and well for you. Is there any follow-ups on that? I'm willing to take them ad hoc. No? Okay, thank you for listening.
If there are no other questions, that concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you so much for coming. If you think of additional questions, feel free to call our public information phone line. Please have a safe drive home.